The scratching sound started on a Tuesday. At first, I thought it was mice. Old houses get them sometimes, especially in Detroit, where I'd just moved into a charming duplex built in the 1920s. The landlord had warned me about quirks. Pipes that clanged, floors that creaked, the usual character of a building with history. But mice don't scratch in rhythm. They don't stop when you walk toward the sound. This did. My name is Rachel, and I'm a single mother with a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. After my divorce, I'd jumped at the chance to rent this place. Affordable, spacious, and in a neighborhood that seemed safe. The other half of the duplex was occupied by an elderly man named Mr. Harrington. Quiet, kept to himself, exactly the kind of neighbor I wanted. The scratching came from the basement. I avoided basements generally. They reminded me of childhood fears, of spaces where shadows lived. But this was my home now, and I needed to be brave. For Emma. I went down with a flashlight one evening after putting her to bed. The basement was unfinished, concrete floor, exposed beams, boxes I hadn't unpacked yet. Normal, except for the smell. Musty, but also something else. Something lived in. I found the source of the scratching near the far wall. The concrete had a crack, wide enough that I could see darkness beyond. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. Then, very faintly, breathing. I jumped back, heart hammering. Old houses settle. Air moves through cracks. That's all it was. But that night, I barely slept. The missing items started the next week. Small things at first. A hairbrush I'd left on the bathroom counter. Emma's favorite stuffed bear that she'd had since infancy. Food from the pantry, specifically the snacks Emma loved. Goldfish crackers, fruit snacks. I blamed stress. New house, new routine, things get misplaced. Except Emma swore she'd left her bear on her bed, and I distinctly remembered putting those crackers on the top shelf. Then Emma said something that stopped me cold. "Mommy, why does the nice man visit when you're at work?" I was folding laundry in our living room. Emma sat coloring at the coffee table, humming to herself. "What nice man, sweetie?" "The old man from next door. He comes through the basement sometimes. He checks on us." My blood turned to ice. "Mr. Harrington comes inside our house?" Emma nodded, not looking up from her drawing. "He's very quiet. He smiles at me. He says he's making sure we're safe." I grabbed Emma, checking her over. "Has he ever touched you? Ever hurt you?" "No, Mommy. He's nice, but he watches me sleep sometimes." Through my door. I called 911 immediately, explained everything. The operator told me to take Emma and leave the house, that police were on their way. We waited in my car, Emma confused about why we'd left so suddenly. I held her tight, watching our front door, terrified I'd see Mr. Harrington emerge. The police searched our house top to bottom, found nothing. Checked the basement, found the crack in the wall, but said it was just normal settling. "Are you sure your daughter didn't dream this?" the officer asked gently. Kids have vivid imaginations. But I knew Emma wasn't lying. I called the landlord the next morning. "I need you to check something. The basement wall between units. Is there supposed to be access between them?" Long pause. The building used to be a single-family home. Back in the 20s, the basement would have been one large space before it was divided into a duplex. "Is there still access?" "There shouldn't be. When they renovated in the 70s, they sealed everything off with concrete walls. Can you come check?" He arrived that afternoon with a contractor. They went straight to the basement while I stayed upstairs with Emma, too afraid to go down there again. 20 minutes later, they came up, both looking pale. "Mrs. Peterson," the landlord said carefully, "there's a panel in that wall. It's hidden behind some old shelving. Someone's been using it to access your side." The contractor added, "And there's evidence of recent use. Scratches around the edges. The hinges have been oiled recently so they don't squeak." I felt sick. "How long?" "No way to know. But Mrs. Peterson, there are items on your side that don't belong to you. Personal items, clothing, some of your daughter's things." They called the police back. This time it was detectives. They confronted Mr. Harrington that evening. I watched from my window as they knocked on his door, as he answered looking confused and harmless in his cardigan and slippers. They brought him down to his basement. I couldn't see what they found, but I saw them bringing out evidence bags. Lots of them. The detective came to update me afterward. "Mr. Harrington claims he's been checking on you and your daughter because he was concerned about your safety. Says he heard noises and wanted to make sure you were okay." "That's insane. That's breaking and entering. That's..." We know, we're filing charges, but I need to tell you what we found in his apartment. I didn't want to know, but I had to. Photographs of you and your daughter. Some taken through windows, some taken inside your home. Items belonging to both of you. Clothing, personal effects, a detailed journal documenting your daily routines. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. The timeline they pieced together was horrifying. Mr. Harrington had been entering our side of the duplex for at least 6 months before we moved in, based on dates in his journal. When we'd arrived, he'd simply continued his routine, entering while I was at work, watching Emma, taking small items as, what, trophies? Evidence of his presence? The worst part was Emma's account, given to a child psychologist. Mr. Harrington had spoken to her multiple times, told her he was a friend, made her promise not to tell me about his visits because it would spoil the secret. He'd been grooming my daughter in my own home. The legal process was a nightmare. Mr. Harrington's lawyer argued he was a lonely old man with boundary issues, not a predator, that he'd never touched Emma, that he thought he was being helpful. The jury disagreed. Breaking and entering, stalking, child endangerment. He was sentenced to 8 years, though at his age, that felt like a lifetime. We moved out immediately. I couldn't stay in that house, knowing he'd watched us sleep, knowing he'd stood in Emma's doorway. But moving didn't erase the damage. Emma has nightmares. She wakes up screaming that someone's watching her. She checks her closet 17 times before bed, counting each time like a ritual. I installed locks on every door, cameras in every room. I checked the basement of our new apartment obsessively, even though it's a modern building with concrete walls that couldn't possibly have hidden passages. Because that's the thing about this kind of violation. It doesn't end when the threat is removed. It lives in you, changes how you see the world. I used to think homes were safe, that walls meant privacy, that strangers stayed on their side of the property line. Now I know better. Now I know that the scariest monsters don't break down doors, they find the cracks, the weak points, the spaces between safety and invasion. They live next door, they smile and wave, they seem harmless until you discover they've been inside your home, inside your life, for months without you knowing. I still think about that basement sometimes, about all the times I heard scratching and ignored it, about all the times Emma might have seen him and said nothing because he'd made it a game, about how close we came to something worse. The duplex has new tenants now. I drove by once, couldn't help myself, saw a young couple moving in, smiling, excited about their first place. I wanted to warn them, to tell them to check the basement wall, to never ever trust that walls mean protection. But what would I say? How do you tell someone that their dream home might be a nightmare? So I drove away and tried to forget. But at night, when the building settles and pipes clang, I still hear it, scratching beneath the floor, rhythmic, deliberate, waiting. The day Jason moved back home, I thought our neighborhood was getting safer. I'd known him since we were kids, running through these same streets in Dalrada, Alabama. He'd been the quiet type then, polite, helpful, the kind of boy who mowed his elderly mother's lawn every Saturday without being asked. When he returned to care for her after 20 years away, people welcomed him, brought casseroles, asked about his job in telecommunications, normal small-town hospitality. I should have noticed the cameras first. It started small. A security camera above his garage, then one by his mailbox, then another facing the street. Within 3 months, his house looked like a surveillance compound, 8 cameras pointing in every direction. I just want Mom to be safe, he told me once, that familiar, polite smile on his face. You can't be too careful these days. I lived 3 houses down with my wife Amanda and our dog Rusty. We'd been in this neighborhood for 5 years. Quiet, friendly, exactly what we wanted. The kind of place where you knew your neighbors' names and borrowed sugar when you ran out. Everything changed when the young woman moved in next door to Jason's mother. Her name was Sarah. She was in her early 30s, worked as a nurse, and had the kind of cheerful disposition that made the whole street smile when she waved. She moved in with 2 rescue dogs that barked sometimes, but nothing excessive. Normal dog behavior. Jason hated those dogs. I was trimming my hedges the first time I heard him yell at her. Sarah's puppies had gotten out. They were still young, still learning, and wandered into his yard. "Get those filthy animals off my property." His voice was different, sharp, violent almost. Sarah apologized profusely, scooping up the puppies. "I'm so sorry, they just..." "I don't care, keep them on your side or I'll call animal control." Sarah looked shaken. I called out to her, "Hey, don't worry about it. Dogs will be dogs, right?" Jason's head snapped toward me. For just a second, I saw something in his eyes that made me take a step back. Then the polite mask returned. "Just trying to keep the neighborhood nice, that's all." Sarah's dogs found homes within a month. The barking stopped. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The lights started soon after. Not regular security lights. These were industrial-strength spotlights that Jason mounted on his roof. They could swivel and track. At night, if Sarah left her house, the lights would follow her car down the street, blinding her with their brilliance. Then he started with the sounds. Sarah worked night shifts at the hospital. She'd come home at 3 a.m. exhausted, and the moment she pulled into her driveway, speakers would blast heavy metal music or recordings of dogs barking, or sometimes just white noise at volumes that rattled windows. "Have you talked to him?" Amanda asked Sarah one afternoon when they ran into each other at the grocery store. "I've tried. He says he's testing his security system." Sarah's hands trembled as she loaded groceries. "But it only happens when I'm outside. It's like he's watching me." He was. The cameras proved it. Then he started targeting me. I made the mistake of defending Sarah to another neighbor. "Just casual conversation. Jason's been a bit hard on her, don't you think?" That night I took Rusty for a walk. Jason was in his driveway wearing all black, not just a black shirt, tactical gear, gloves, boots. He was cleaning his lawnmower, but the way he looked at me. "Evening," I said, keeping my voice light. He didn't respond, just stared. Rusty growled, which he'd never done before at anyone. The next morning I found my mailbox smashed. Then the tires on my car were slashed. Then someone cut the power line to my house, leaving us in darkness for 6 hours. The police came, took reports. "Do you have any proof it was him?" I pointed to his cameras. "Check those, they point at my house." "We'd need a warrant, and we'd need probable cause for a warrant." We were trapped in a loop of legal impossibility. Then Jason started wearing the ghillie suit. For those who don't know, a ghillie suit is what snipers wear. It's covered in strips of fabric and netting that makes you look like vegetation. Perfect camouflage. Jason would put it on and stand in his yard, sometimes for hours, just standing there, barely visible, watching the neighborhood. Kids stopped playing outside. Then came the hockey mask. He'd mow his lawn wearing it, revving the engine unnecessarily loud, walking in patterns that brought him closer and closer to property lines. Sarah stopped coming outside during the day. I saw her curtains twitch sometimes, just watching, afraid. Amanda started having nightmares. "What if he has guns?" she whispered one night. I wanted to say no. I wanted to reassure her, but I couldn't. The other neighbor, Kristen, had her own hell. Her dog got sick suddenly, poisoned, the vet said. She'd found toxic pellets in her yard. Then Jason started hiding in her bushes at night, watching her house. "He knows my schedule," she told me, voice cracking. "He knows when I leave for work, when I come home, when I'm alone." We called the police again, and again, and again. "Unless he makes a direct threat." "He is a direct threat. He's stalking us." Finally, they got a protection order. Jason couldn't possess firearms, couldn't come near Sarah or Kristen. The police searched his house. What they found still gives me nightmares. 17 guns, thousands of rounds of ammunition, cell phone jammers that explained why our phones never worked properly near his house, infrared illuminators designed to blind security cameras, equipment that belonged in a military compound, not a suburban home, and notebooks. Pages and pages of notes about us, our schedules, our cars, who visited us and when. He'd been documenting our lives like a researcher studying lab rats. The trial was surreal. Jason's lawyer argued he had no violent history, that his behavior was eccentric but not criminal, that he was just a man trying to protect his mother. But the victims testified. Sarah, shaking, describing how she'd stopped being able to sleep, how she'd wake up to spotlights tracking her bedroom window. Kristen, crying, holding a photo of her poisoned dog. Me, explaining how a man I'd known since childhood had turned our neighborhood into a surveillance state. The judge gave him 40 years. 40 years for stalking, for harassment, for turning our homes into prisons. People ask me sometimes why we didn't just move, why we didn't leave. Because this was our home. Because we shouldn't have to flee from terror, because running doesn't solve the problem, it just moves it somewhere else. The cameras are gone now. Jason's mother moved away, too ashamed to stay. The house sits empty, a for sale sign slowly weathering in the yard. but I still check my locks 3 times before bed. Amanda still flinches when she hears a lawnmower. Sarah moved across the country and never looked back. The neighborhood is quiet again. Safe, supposedly. But sometimes, late at night, I dream that I see someone standing in that ghillie suit at the edge of our property, barely visible in the darkness. And I wonder how many other neighborhoods have their own Jason. How many quiet, polite men are documenting their neighbors' lives, collecting weapons, waiting for something to snap. How many people are prisoners in their own homes right now, calling police who can't help until it's too late. The law caught Jason eventually, after years of terror, after lives were destroyed. But the real horror is how long it took. How many reports were filed and ignored. How many times we were told there was nothing that could be done, until there was almost nothing left of us to save. It was 3:42 a.m. when the first light hit our bedroom window. Not sunlight, something artificial, strobing, blinking in a pattern that felt deliberate, almost mocking. My wife Sarah stirred beside me, pulling the pillow over her head. "Marcus," she mumbled. "The lights again." I'd been counting. 17 nights in a row now since we moved into our dream home on Ashwood Court. 17 nights of those damn lights. We were so excited when we found this place. A quiet cul-de-sac in a nice neighborhood, perfect for raising our 2 kids. The kind of street where people waved to each other, where kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. Everything we'd saved for, everything we'd dreamed about after years of cramped apartments. The house next door looked ordinary enough. A single-story ranch with faded blue siding. We'd waved to the owner once during our walkthrough. A middle-aged man who didn't wave back, just stared from his driveway before disappearing inside. "Probably just shy," Sarah had said. The lights started our first week. Motion-activated floodlights that didn't just illuminate, they pulsed. Bright, blinding strobes that turned our bedroom into a disco of dread. At first we thought it was a malfunction, but the timing was too precise. Every time we came home from work, every time we let the dog out, every time one of us took out the trash, the lights knew. Then came the cameras. I counted them one morning while drinking coffee on our front porch, trying to enjoy the quiet before the kids woke up. 8 cameras, all pointed in our direction, not at his own property, at ours. At our driveway, our front door, our bedroom window. "Maybe he's just really concerned about security," Sarah suggested, but her voice wavered. She didn't believe it either. The music started on a Thursday. Our daughter Lily was 7, playing hopscotch in our driveway after school. I heard the speaker crackle to life from next door, a sound system that must have cost thousands. Then came the sound. Banjo music. Loud, discordant, deliberately jarring. It shook our windows. Lily dropped her chalk and ran inside, hands over her ears. I marched next door, knocked on his door. The music cut off instantly. I could see him through the window, standing in his living room, watching me through the glass. Just watching. He didn't move to answer. After 5 minutes, I went home. That night, Sarah called the police. "We've gotten several calls about noise from that address," the officer told us, almost apologetically. "But he turns it off before we arrive. And technically, playing music on your own property during daytime hours isn't illegal." "What about the cameras?" I asked. "The lights?" "Pointed at his own property, from what we can see. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. Unless he makes a direct threat or commits a crime, our hands are tied." The next morning, everything escalated. I opened our front door to leave for work. The motion sensor triggered, but instead of music, speakers blared something else, something that made my blood run cold. Monkey sounds, screeching, chattering monkey sounds that echoed through the entire cul-de-sac. Then came the voice, a recording of some old racist comedy routine I'd never heard before. The N-word, over and over, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Sarah appeared behind me, her hand over her mouth. Marcus, our son Elijah, only 9 years old, came running. "Dad, what's that word? Why is he saying that?" How do you explain hatred to a child? How do you tell your son that the color of his skin makes some people want to hurt him, to degrade him, to make him feel small? I had to explain it anyway. The routine became predictable in its cruelty. Every morning, every evening, any time we stepped outside our own home, the sensors would detect us, the lights would flash, and the soundtrack of our nightmare would begin. I contacted a lawyer. Harassment, she said. But proving intent is difficult, and there are First Amendment protections even for hate speech, unless it constitutes a direct threat. Sarah started having panic attacks. The kids became afraid to play outside. Our dream home became a prison. I tried talking to other neighbors. They'd noticed, of course. How could they not? But they had their own songs, personalized harassment for each family that triggered his senses. Country music for the family across the street. Heavy metal for the couple next door. Everyone was afraid. "I'm just trying to keep my head down," one neighbor told me. "I've got 2 more years until my lease is up, then I'm gone." But we just bought this house. We couldn't just leave. We couldn't afford to. I started documenting everything. Videos of the lights, recordings of the sounds, timestamps. The lawyer said it might help eventually. Maybe a civil case. Harassment, emotional distress. But laws move slowly. Suffering happens in real time. Sarah found me one night, sitting in our car in the driveway at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about how he was out there, watching our windows through his cameras, waiting for movement, ready to push a button and remind us that we weren't welcome. "We can't let him win," Sarah whispered. But what did winning even look like? The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon, our daughter's 8th birthday. We'd invited her whole class to our backyard for a party. Kids running around, laughing, eating cake. He must have been waiting for this moment. The speakers erupted at full volume, not music this time, recordings of screaming, animal sounds, racial slurs mixed with screeching feedback. It sounded like the soundtrack to hell. Parents grabbed their children, kids started crying. The party ended in 15 minutes. Lily sat in her room afterwards, still in her birthday dress, tears streaming down her face. "Why does he hate us, Daddy?" That question broke something in me. I called the police again, filed another report. The officer who responded was sympathetic but clear. Unless he makes a specific threat of violence, we can't arrest him. Playing sounds on his own property, even offensive sounds, isn't criminally actionable. "So we're just supposed to live like this?" The officer looked away. "I'm sorry." That night I sat at my computer and wrote everything down. Every incident, every moment of terror, every time my children asked questions I couldn't answer. I posted it online. The response was immediate. Thousands of people shared our story. News stations called. Activists arrived. Our quiet cul-de-sac became a spotlight. And slowly, finally, the community responded. Neighbors who'd been silent organized a rally. They stood in our driveway with signs. "Hate has no home here. We stand with the Williams family." The local news filmed everything. 3 days later, I opened my front door to silence. No lights, no sounds, no harassment. The cameras were still there, watching, but the torture had stopped. For now. I wish I could say this story has a happy ending, that the bad neighbor moved away, that we got justice, that our kids forgot what they heard and learned that day. But this is real life. Laws protect property rights and free speech, even when they're weaponized, even when they destroy families. We still live in our dream home, but every morning, I pause before opening our front door. Every time I hear a sound outside, my heart races. Every time the kids play in the yard, I watch those cameras, knowing he's watching too. The house next door sits quiet most days now, but sometimes, late at night, I see him through the window, just standing there, watching our house. And I know the silence is only temporary, because the truly terrifying thing about this story isn't that it happened, it's that it's still happening. That somewhere right now, another family is opening their door to lights and sounds and hatred. That the law says you have the right to peace in your own home, until you don't. That nightmares don't always come from strangers in the dark. Sometimes, they live next door. Thank you for making it to the end. Please like and subscribe for horror stories like these every week, shared by real people. Comment below to let me know which story from this video you found more terrifying. Thanks again for supporting the channel.